Nebraska Athletic Director Trev Alberts recently took the same job over at Texas A&M, but this is a college football show. So with that being the case, what does this mean for Matt Rhule? What does it mean for Nebraska? We'll talk about all that right now, but first things first, man. Nebraska fans, y'all been loyal to us. Y'all been good to us. We've had a ton of y'all subscribe to this very channel to get your college football fix on a year-round basis. We appreciate y'all for that. So if you haven't yet subscribed, man, now is the time to get dialed in. Little AD higher on the horizon, it sounds like. So get locked in right here. We talk a lot about Nebraska, talk a lot about Coach Rhule. Big year for y'all. We appreciate y'all in advance for double checking that you're subscribed to the channel. So thank you for that. There's no way around it, man. This is not ideal. It's never ideal to have your athletic director taken from you to do the exact same job at another big-time institution, which, of course, is Texas A&M. And I don't really want to get too far into the weeds of why Trev Alberts left Nebraska for A&M, because look at what he did when he was at Nebraska. Trev Alberts, I think you can pretty confidently say, has left Nebraska better than when he found it. Hired a great football coach in Matt Rhule, secured a big multi-media rights agreement, got a big-time check for the new football facilities. Like, he did a lot for Nebraska since his time there. And also, there's a part of this that kind of tugs on the heartstrings because, of course, he played at Nebraska. He's a Husker through and through. So I understand the frustration of, like, hey, this is a guy that's from here, leaving here for another job at this exact same position. Like, I understand the way that it feels. But at the end of the day, I think a lot of folks in the long run will probably credit Trev Alberts in some small part for the success that Matt Rhule has in Nebraska because, again, he is the guy that brought him to Lincoln. So with that being said, what does it mean for Matt Rhule? What does it mean for the football program, right? Again, college football show, that's the lens we view everything through here around here. As much as this is frustrating and as much as it's maybe destabilizing in some ways, Trev Alberts leaving Nebraska will mean as much to Matt Rhule's situation as Nebraska football allows it to. Because at the end of the day, man, when does it really matter the kind of relationship that you have with your boss? Whenever you're not doing a great job, right? Because if you're doing a good job, you're probably not hearing from your boss that often. Unless they're telling you, hey, good job. You say, okay, thanks, you keep it moving. Like, the boss is there to make sure the company does well. And so if you're holding up your end of the bargain, the boss is going to focus his attention somewhere else. And so for Matt Rhule, like, I firmly believe that whether it was Trev Alberts, whether it's a different AD, like, he is going to be responsible for the success of Nebraska football. Okay, like, that's the obvious part. Like, Trev Alberts isn't calling plays. Trev Alberts isn't catching passes. Like, at the end of the day, this is about Matt Rhule and what he's going to do at Nebraska. So whichever AD that they hire next, like, there's going to be the obvious storyline of, well, hey, he didn't bring Matt Rhule here. We're only going to talk about that if Matt Rhule goes 4-8 next year and Nebraska starts to struggle, which, again, I don't really foresee happening. You look at Nebraska, man, that arrow is pointing up. There's no way around it. You got your quarterback of the future in Dylan Raiola. I wouldn't expect him to take him to the college football playoff this upcoming season, but with all his ability, the way that folks talk about him in Lincoln, he could be special long-term. Could be really, really good for you there. You bring back your defensive coordinator, Tony White, for another season, on top of the fact that you bring back 78% of the production from that defense a season ago that only allowed 18 points a game. Like, Nebraska, I know it's frustrating to hear year in and year out, but they're close, man. They're close. And we had Matt Rhule on this very show, and he told us the jump that happens for me as a head coach from year 1 to year 2 is about buy-in. It's going from Matt Rhule's way of doing things, this coaching staff's way of doing things, to the player's way of doing things. That becomes one and the same. It becomes player-led is essentially what he's saying there. So Trev Alberts leaving, a lot of emotional ties to it, but it's not really going to impact Matt Rhule until we get down the line here and things don't go the way that I think a lot of y'all in Lincoln and me personally expect this thing to trend. Now, who's going to be that next AD at Nebraska? It's a tremendous question. If I had the answer to it, I probably wouldn't be sitting here talking about it. Probably be somewhere else making the hire. But I say this about a lot of jobs, like you say this about the Ohio State running back job. You could say this about Alabama when they had to hire a head coach. Like, Nebraska's in a unique spot where they can really afford to swing big. Because as much success as Nebraska hasn't had recently on the football field, that's a massive brand. Like, you see that red N anywhere across the United States, you know who that is. There's some very real recognizable factor to Nebraska. Also, they're in the Big Ten. That's a two-faceted statement to make that they're in the Big Ten. There's two advantages to being in the Big Ten. The first is you're going to make a lot of money. Okay, like we understand it. When it comes to the football side of things, the Big Ten is, I believe, still the richest conference when it comes to the money they're getting on the TV side. That's obvious. The other part of this, though, as the tectonic plates continue to shift in college football, I don't think we're that far off from the Super Conference era. And when we get to the Super Conference era, it's going to be SEC, it's going to be Big Ten. So there's going to be a lot of teams, a lot of schools, I think, in the not-too-distant future that are scrambling and trying to find a life raft, which, is eventually going to get them into one of those two. If you're Nebraska, you're like, hey, come what will, come what may, like, we're cool in the Big Ten. And so if you're an AD, you're obviously operating out of a position of power as opposed to being at another conference or another school, another conference, and trying to find a way to survive a little bit there. So at the end of the day, man, it hurts for the emotional reasons. It hurts because you kind of thought this thing was just starting to get off the ground because you hadn't been at Nebraska that long as the AD. But is it going to impact Matt Rhule? Is it going to impact the football program? I don't think so. Why? Because I don't think you're going to have an AD that is having to really keep close tabs on Matt Rhule and try and, figure out, is he doing things the right way? Matt Rhule is going to win in Nebraska. How quickly and to what degree remains to be seen, but I feel pretty confident in saying Matt Rhule is going to win in Nebraska. And so whoever the next AD is, we'll get to enjoy the fruits of Matt Rhule and Trev Alberts' labor and keep it headed in the right direction. To make sure this show heads in the right direction, make sure you're subscribed. Comment below how you feel about Trev Alberts leaving Nebraska to be the new AD at Texas A&M. Curious to hear from y'all. Also, follow me on Twitter and Instagram at JD Piquel. Love y'all. We appreciate y'all. We're going to keep this party rolling, and we will see y'all next time. Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.